you for listening. This is Sherry Andrea, and I wanted to speak today about connecting and disconnecting. As some of you know, I have a post on my blog that is for empaths, let me say. It's specifically written for empaths who are in the process of learning to control their empathy and learning to gain control of it. Now, the purpose of me teaching this and teaching them how to gain control is because without it, they suffer greatly. So there is a specific intended audience here. Now, I get many people coming to my blog that they read the words and they make a judgment about what they think about, what I said or what I'm teaching, but they don't look at it from a wider point of view. They don't really, many people don't really stop to get into the who's the intended audience, who is this really for, what is it really meant to do. And of course, many times when we go to people's blogs, we don't think that way. When we're reading for information. We're reading to see what's there that the person is sharing. But to be honest, we really don't stop and think that. We don't stop and think, oh, who is the intended audience they're speaking to? We don't stop and think, oh, is this for, is this geared towards a specific group or a person that's going through something specific? I got an email this morning from somebody that was very upset with me for writing the article about connecting and disconnecting. Basically saying that, the gist of it was that I was irresponsible for even writing it, and that this is not something that I should share and not something that I should teach. Now, of course, that kind of, it all depends on whether that is right or wrong. It depends on what my intended audience was. This person who had emailed me was the main reason why they were upset is because in the past they have suffered greatly, been hospitalized a few times because of it, and in their words, I quote, almost died. And in fact, I have spoken many times about what I call, a psychic attack, meaning someone affected your energy field either intentionally or unintentionally, and without knowing or being able to disconnect from it, clear yourself of it, protect yourself from it, you may have suffered greatly. I always teach that it could, as far as how we can affect each other, can be to the to one end of the scale is just getting a slight headache, actually feeling it in one of our chakras in a painful way, to becoming violently ill or just nauseous, to the extreme of actually ending up, getting much more ill than that, to the point where you have to be hospitalized, where it seriously drains your energy to the point where your energy level drops down really low. Now, I'm not going to, go into explaining what happens, what and why on the, extreme of the scale of, getting sick to the point of being hospitalized. I'm not going to go into, what's going on and what's happening, but many people have actually experienced this. And I had actually said this to someone one time, that I am sure there are many people, a lot, who have actually died, and the cause of whatever ended up happening really was what we call a psychic attack. Now, like I said, I mean, I'm not saying it was intentional or unintentional, but I'm sure, I've said this before, that I'm sure there's many people. However, the reason why I wanted to address this email is because there are many people out there who have not only suffered this experience, but there are also many people that don't believe that this is something that people should be able to do. Well, guess what? This is life. This is it. This is what we do and that we are not aware of. If we could see energetically everything that was going on, we would see what happened just when we stood next to another person to communicate with them. We would see what was going on with our energy fields. Now, if you read even the most basic books out there that either deal specifically with, energy work, even the beginners books that deal with psychic abilities, they explain what happens when it comes to like a overlap in energy fields between two people. When I say connecting versus disconnecting, that is actually what I am speaking of. I am speaking of an overlap of, and I'm sorry for all the noise you hear in the background. The landscape, it's Wednesday, so it's landscaping day. Plus there's like helicopters flying overhead, and sorry about that. But when I speak of connecting and disconnecting, I am actually, if you could see it, you would see something. If I wrote it down and showed you in effect what it looked like, I could almost write something that we are used to seeing in a math class in high school, where we have those two circles that overlap and then there's that middle area that they both share. When there's a connection, that is actually what's going on. Is there's that middle area that they're both sharing, which there's that transfer back and forth, and it is very much two-way transfer. It's never just a transfer one single way. Same thing with telepathy. Telepathy is based on the same thing. There's a connection between two people. However, no matter what you think is going on, what is actually going on is that there's this connection that is a two-way connection. It's not just going one way. So even when people are connecting to another, a person is connecting to another person, when they make that connection, you have to understand this is not a one-way connection. You are sending as they are receiving, for example, and they are sending as they're also receiving. So it's a two-way street. They're getting and you're getting, they're sending, you're sending, and then there's, of course, the matter of whether it's intentional or unintentional. Most times it's unintentional, but I can't be responsible, of course, for the misuse and unqualified use of God's energy all throughout the world. I'm not going to accept a responsibility for whoever in the world does not have control of themselves. Like, for example, who hasn't done self-work yet. Maybe they very often suffer from things such as frustration, anger, worry, all these things that are of the negative self. I'm not sorry, but I'm not responsible for what people in the world are putting out. I am not universal energy myself. I am not God. So what I'm saying is, I try to share knowledge because knowledge is power. Many times once people understand what happens, for example, just simply when they get angry or frustrated, what they're sending out and how it may affect another, often, people will actually, once they realize what happens, they'll try harder. They'll say, oh, well, that's not what I want to do. That's not my intention. I don't want to hurt another person. Of course not. Of course they don't. But we can't solve the problem by saying, don't put the knowledge out there. Don't teach it to anyone. Actually, we are coming out of that. That was, in fact, the past, where during a time, if you know anything about the history of, Lemuria and Atlantis, it's a story that goes that these were people that had great abilities. Now, of course, they held a greater amount of light than we did. They were they were connected to their I am presence, their higher self, unlike unlike what we've been experiencing, in the last decades. But along the way, a couple of people started experimenting, you could say, and they delved into the misqualified use of universal energy. And cause and effect is always at play, and there were consequences suffered from that. And so, for a while, knowledge, in fact, was withheld from us. Well, now you could say that we're rising back up from having reached a low point. So, to say, oh, there's some things that shouldn't be shared, there's some things that shouldn't be taught, then we would have to say that we're no better than we used to be. We're actually trying to now learn and do the self work that is necessary so we can get back to the great awesome beings that we once were. But we can't do that in fear. Now, of course, this person that emailed me, the truth is that at any given time, everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And now I've said that many times, and I've had people look at me strange and go, whoa, I'm suffering right now. You think I want that for myself? Well, of course you don't want it for yourself, but at any given time, whatever's going on in your life is exactly what's supposed to be going on. So you have to actually look at it a little bit further, a little bit deeper, and you actually have to say, when situations happen, what am I meant to learn from this? What is this showing me about myself? The minute you find yourself looking outside of yourself and looking at what the other person did, what the other person caused, what the other person made you suffer, that's a sign right there that you're not focused on the right place. And you won't find answers outside of yourself. You will only find answers within yourself. So if when things are happening, you're not internalizing it and going, what is this showing me? Is this a test for me? If so, what is it I'm supposed to learn from this? Or possibly it's a test to see how you deal with such great adversity. The apostles and the disciples, they were tested. They were tested greatly along the way. They were all tested. Jesus was tested. However, some people realize they're being tested, and then some people, of course, they don't. And there's nothing, wrong with that. That doesn't mean they're at fault or anything. That just means that maybe they haven't come to the point in their spiritual advancement where they're looking at things in that different way. What are you seeing? What are you looking at? Are you looking at the illusion? Or are you looking at the reality? And what you should do is, it's not easy, but you should always attempt to always tell yourself, okay, this may be an illusion. What is the reality? If this is an illusion and I'm not seeing the reality, let me ponder it. Let me look closer. Let me see if I can see through the illusion and see what the reality is. We are always being thrown a lesson or tested. I mean, I see so many times people describe these things to me. They'll just be telling me something that happened in their day. And I realize that it was a lesson for them. And then once I start talking to them, I'll actually ask them, I'll say to them, do you notice that the things that are happening to you kind of fall within the same realm, like the same type of thing is happening to you, different, maybe in a different way and with different people, but kind of along the same lines. Is your patience being tested? Is this a lesson of patience? If so, you may be constantly getting lessons and being tested on things that test your patience. The answer won't be found outside of yourself with another person. The answer will only be found within yourself. And so, I know I haven't said a lot about the actual connecting versus disconnecting, but that's because that's actually not something I teach. Yes, I realize that I received an email that said you shouldn't teach this, but that's not actually something I teach. I mean, that is when it comes to empath skill, you must know how to disconnect. But there are going to be times when you also may want to connect. Like if somebody has asked for your help, there may be a time when you may want to connect to them in the process of giving them help. Now, I've never said that you should be that you shouldn't have, before you go out there to help somebody, that you shouldn't have done all the work on yourself and cleared yourself. In fact, I often am saying that you need to spend a lot of time doing the self-work, clearing yourself, resolving issues from the past and being able to let go of them. So I say that often. I never really, and I still don't ever suggest to anyone that they go ahead and jump into helping other people unless they feel they have gotten to a place where they're ready. And I can't say if a person is ready. You can only look within to know if you're ready. And if you are asking to be guided and you are actually following that guidance, then you'll never have to worry about stepping out and you're not ready, because if you're following the guidance, you wouldn't be guided to step out before it's time and before it's ready. You wouldn't be guided to speak and to say things that aren't of the most benefit to all. Also, the other thing that this leads to and that I want to bring up is something that I spoke of before in one of my last recorded shows on Blog Talk Radio, and I spoke about the path. And I thought about it, and I thought that article on my blog that I wrote about connecting and disconnecting, and I thought, when did I write that? And I actually think it was a while ago, and it may have been 2007 or 2008. Well, for those of you who have been on the path for a while, you understand that you are constantly changing and growing. It's a constant. You're always changing and growing. And the path is that we're never done. We're always changing and growing. We're dropping old belief systems and we're picking up new beliefs. Our truths are changing. The truth you have today, you may not have that same truth tomorrow. You may in meditation be made aware of things that cause you to change the truth that you have today. And that is, in fact, the way it's supposed to work. That is the way it works. So I guess what I'm saying is, be careful and be kind to another person and don't fault them for being on the path, basically. The path is what it is. Don't then fault them for the way it works. Don't fault them for the way, God created all this and made this all work. Don't take your anger and frustration out on them because you are experiencing things in your life that in fact you plan to experience and learn from in your life. Many times, I mean, I see it all the time. Many times when people speak to me about the things that they're going through, it is this person did this and this person did that and this person said this and this person made me feel that. And it's very much with a lot of people, I mean, it's habit to look outside of themselves and to point the finger at another. But really, um, the only way that we really find what's truly going on and what's truly happening is when we start looking within our own selves and we realize some truths. And I don't fault anyone for like being on the path and not having gotten to the point where they realize certain things, and because they haven't realized them yet it causes them to blame me for something. I don't fault them for that. They're on the path just like I am. They'll come to that when it's time and when they're ready for it, when they're ready for the truth of what the reason for the experiences they had and who chose for them to have those experiences, and that they in fact themselves chose to come here, learn certain things, have certain lessons and experiences. um I don't want to rush that, and none of us should rush it. But sometimes, when you find that you're reacting, or, you're wanting to comment or tell somebody something that is very, that even with just a quick glance you could see is like from your lesser self. It's not words of your higher self. It's not your higher self saying this. You know, that's a part of gaining self mastery. That is your moment to see that and to stop and to say, no, I have control of myself, and I will not react based on what my lesser self, my negative ego wants me to do. My negative ego is not in control of me. So I'm hoping that speaking about this today kind of widens the view of what's going on, to give you a wider view rather than just the narrow. I mean, for me to speak of just connecting and disconnecting, I'd be giving you a narrow view, but I'm trying to take it out a little bit and show you a much bigger picture for you to ponder, think on, meditate on. Meditate on it. Just simply do that. Meditate on it. If you can't meditate because you have trouble quieting your mind, that's okay. Just sit quietly. Even if it's hard for you to completely quiet your mind, sit quietly, do the best you can, because believe me, you will still benefit greatly from it. It will still offer you benefits. I don't want anyone to think that just because they can't quiet their mind that meditation will not work for them. No, in fact, it still will work. Yeah, maybe to a lesser degree, but still, you will receive great benefits from it. It still will have the ability to change um, to actually change your brain, to actually change that, because like scientists have found that meditation actually lessens the area of brain matter that is in control, is responsible for things such as worry, anxiety, frustration, depression. Though for meditation those areas are lessened. But often people who are suffering from these things, depression, anxiety, frustration, all those things, generally those are the people who are in fact have the hardest time meditating. So if that's you, don't worry and don't feel like there's no answer for you, that you have to find another way. No, that is still your way. It's not taken away from you just because you have a harder time quieting your mind. Believe me, you have to believe and trust that if you just sit there quietly, that even if you can't 100% quiet your mind, that in fact the benefits will still be yours. You will still gain benefits, and before you know it, if you stick to that and you faithfully do that every day, once a day for 10 minutes, that one day you will surprise yourself and you will realize that suddenly you are able to do what maybe 2 weeks ago you were not. And it's the same way for all of us. You think I was able to sit and meditate and the first time I was able to do it? No. It was actually quite comical. I couldn't believe after a few tries that I couldn't do it. I couldn't quiet my mind for even a minute. And I was like, wow. I didn't see this as being that difficult. I thought this would be easy. And then I realized that I couldn't even do it for a minute. But I wouldn't give up. And I would keep trying. So what I would do is I would start meditating, and like the minute a thought came into my mind, I would brush it away. I would keep brushing it away, keep brushing it away. But I had a clock. So finally, after I don't know how many tries, I managed to do 1 minute. And I celebrated like I had just managed to do an hour. I mean, that was like cause for me to celebrate. And if you have a very hard time meditating, then you know what I'm talking about. Have cause to celebrate that 1 minute, because that's a great achievement if you have a mind that is very busy like mine was. So if I could do it, you can do it too. It's just that we can do it. It's just not as easy for us in the beginning to learn how to do it. It's not as easy for us to retrain our brains that it's okay to be quiet, that now is the time to be quiet. This really is a retraining and reconditioning our brains, because basically you could think like this: if you've let your brain just do whatever it wanted to do without imposing any control on it for your whole life, do you really think that the first time you try to meditate, your brain's just going to automatically go, oh, you want to control me? You're talking to me now? You're telling me to be quiet? Okay, I'm going to do that. No. Your whole life, your brain had control without any input from you. It is not used to having input from you. You have to get it used to that. And you can't be willing to throw in the towel just because it's not easy. You, in fact, to be on a spiritual path, to be on a path to even just wanting to improve yourself, wanting to have a better life, it's not easy, but you won't get it by quickly throwing in the towel. You actually have to pull out the greatest amount of tenacity that you've ever pulled out before. You actually have to, take it think of it in the way of, I will not be beat. I will win this. I will do this and I will win this. I will come out on top. I will conquer this. You really have to take that attitude about it. And just keep trying. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Why does it matter the length of time it takes to get there? What are you in a hurry for? Whether you're just trying to do some self-work, whether you're on a spiritual path, no matter what your reason for doing it, what is the hurry? There isn't one. This isn't a race, and there's no finish line. So you've got all the time in the world. So go ahead and at least commit yourself to not giving up. And if you could just do that, just commit yourself to not giving up and to doing it every day, no matter what the outcome, even if the whole time you meditate those whole 5 or 10 minutes, your brain's just chatting away, you commit yourself to still doing it anyway. And then if you can do that, you in fact will succeed, because the only way you can fail is if you don't try. Now, I want to speak a little bit more before I call an end to this about connecting and disconnecting. Now, forget about what I've called it, because what I've called it is nothing more than a label that I as a human put on it. Connecting versus disconnecting. Let's talk about what's going on unconsciously. Let's talk about the things that are going on that we are not doing on purpose. First of all, there is a connecting and disconnecting going on constantly at all times. Let me tell you, if you are that person who has thought, oh, people shouldn't know how to do this, well, guess what? Let me tell you something. You're doing it all the time, even though you're unconscious of it. The connecting and the disconnecting, if you've even thought about Aunt Mary today, you connected to her. If you thought and you wondered how your child was doing, you connected to them. If you've thought and pondered somebody that you thought about and pondered on somebody that you hadn't seen in a while and just wondered, wonder how they're doing, guess what? Putting your focus on them, you connected to them. If you answered the phone and it was your friend Joe, during that conversation, the two of you establish an energetic connection. Now, all these connections, I didn't say anything about you doing anything that disconnected, because in fact, the disconnect doesn't automatically happen. When you're on the phone with Joe and you connect, because there's that focus that you're putting on each other. You connect to him, he connects to you, because you're focusing on each other. And then when you hang up the phone, you don't automatically disconnect. That connection stays. Now, that's not something someone has done intentionally. That is, in fact, the way it works. And so now think about it. What do you do for a living? Are you a customer service rep? Are you a salesperson? Do you work in an office, work throughout the day? You talk to 10, 20, 30 of your coworkers, where at some point, maybe even if you don't speak to them, maybe for some reason you put focus on them to connect to them. Now think about it. Then you come home. Maybe you answer the phone as a telemarketer trying to sell you something. Think about it. By the end of the day, let me not forget. Then you watch TV maybe. Maybe the only thing you watch is the news. You watch the newscasters. You see the stories the news stories that they're reporting. You see these interviews. Oh, these other people who are speaking now, who you're putting focus on and you're connecting to. Oh, wow. By the end of the day, how many people have you unconsciously connected to? A lot. But I didn't say anything about disconnecting, did I? No, because in fact, you didn't disconnect. Now, a disconnect may have happened on its own. Maybe the other person, maybe they do something throughout the day, some type of practice that they do that would have caused them to break the connection. But what did you do? Did you in any way consciously break those connections? If the answer is no, then how many connections do you have piled on? Oh, then you got sick. Then you ended up in the hospital. I wonder, how did that happen? Well, as you can see, it's not clear how that happened. You can't really pinpoint it often and say out of all those people, there's one person I connected to that had something really dark going on that through that connection caused me to get ill. It happens. It happens all the time. Is there somebody that you didn't know, maybe they were into some type of dark arts, dark magic, and you didn't know that because you didn't know much about them, and maybe you said something and it pissed them off and they intentionally did something to affect your energy. Maybe there are things that are going on that we're unaware of a lot of the times. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you that wider picture of what's going on and what's happening every day. Now, the thing is, I didn't speak of disconnecting because, in fact, often most people don't do anything to disconnect, to break those connections. And those connections, without being purposely broken, those connections stay anywhere from hours to days to weeks to months. And how long they stay sometimes is affected by what's going on with that other person. For example, I mean, I've had repeated connections to people where I have to continue breaking them and breaking them because whatever's going on with them, maybe they're going through a hard time or something. Their energy is really low. And so the connection continues establishing. Even if I break it, it keeps reestablishing. There's that going on too. Oh, so there's so many things going on. If you really take a good long look beneath this, surface, there's so many things going on. That is, in fact, why there is the importance of teaching, connecting, and disconnecting. So now that I've shared that with you, now you can see the importance of why, for empaths, why I teach that, why I teach connecting and disconnecting. Because, of course, I mean, I could just teach disconnecting, but if I don't teach connecting, I would not be giving a very clear picture and setting them up very well for learning to disconnect. I need to first, of course, teach like what, how the connection happens. From them learning connecting, they learn the basics of a connection. Very basic, yeah. But then you need to practice the disconnecting. Now, often one of the best ways to practice this is to practice it with like someone that where that person and that it's probably going to be safe for you to connect to them, and you can practice connecting versus disconnecting. And often this person that you practice with, often you ask them, you tell them, well, I need to practice. Can I practice with you? Often this is what's going on. I know there are some people out there that want to think that everybody's just all willy-nilly, just like going off the grid and going Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But in fact, a lot of people are considerate enough to ask the other person, hey, can I practice with you? Can I practice on you? And the other person is a willing participant so that they can keep the lines of communication open, so that it is, they're practicing in a way that is safe. Then, of course, there are some people out there that are practicing in a way that is irresponsible and verging on immoral. Well, I'm not responsible for that. Was going on long, believe me, that type of thing was going on long before I came into the picture, so to speak. And some people now want to make me responsible for it for the simple fact that I wrote one post I don't know how many years ago. So what I'm trying to explain to you is that don't spend your time and waste your time being mad and trying to find somebody to, point the finger at and to blame and to say you're at fault for this. Instead, spend time acquiring the knowledge that you need and attaining that self-control, that mastery of self. It's time much better spent, than letting your negative ego run amok and egg you on to email someone like me, and say, hey, I got sick. Now it's your fault. You wrote this post. I am following a path, and I follow it, and I'm doing my purpose, and I do it in a way that's guided. And I don't go looking for people to work with, as many of you know. I usually end up working with just the people who are guided to me. Other people that come to me here and there, I try to give them what I feel, will help them. Help them, keep them safe, and keep them from harming another. So I do kind of feel like that on a day-to-day basis, I've I've done what I do, and I've done it well, and you know what I mean, and I've done it in a ethical way. I've done it in a caring way and a responsible way. So if there, if you feel that you see some information and you're like, oh, this shouldn't be taught, you need to really turn around and question why you feel that way, you know, and you really need to spend enough time, digging beneath the surface to how you feel and why you feel that way, you know, to find out what's really going on. What is it that really is making you feel that way? What is really affecting you? Are you still angry about something or upset about something that happened to you in the past? Well, then that gives you something specific to know that you maybe need to work on. And that's actually a really good thing. Anytime that we can clearly see, oh, this is pointing to something that, I still need to work on, because when I think about this thing that happened to me, it still elicits negative feelings. It still kind of angers me. It still kind of makes me feel those emotions that it originally made me feel. That's just a sign right there. You're not done with it. You have some more work that you need to do regarding that situation. And don't go the wrong direction and look outside of yourself. That is not the time to look outside of yourself. That's the time to turn it back around and look within yourself and start asking your higher self for guidance and understanding. That is the time when you have that chance to look and really understand more that may, on your spiritual path, move you forward. So I hope that you've gotten a lot or something out of this recording. And if there's any questions that you have, feel free to email me at sherry@sherryandrea.com. Or if you'd like to read more about, any of the things that I've spoken about, most of them I've written about on my blog, sherryandrea.com. And I am, as always, glad to spend this time with you, glad to share things with you. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. Until next time.